The hideous shrieks of burning civilians echoed through the devastated streets as the merciless Traxidan armada bombarded the once proud city of New Terra. Humanity's next move would stun the galaxy to its core. Amidst the flaming ruins, the intrepid engineer Victor Stroud activated his experimental hyper-ionic pulse shield. In desperation, mankind's only hope against the vicious surprise attack. Joining forces with the battle-hardened Colonel Hale, Stroud raced to transform his defensive marvel into a vengeful weapon, Earth's survival hanging by a thread. Failure meant total extinction. The defiant people of Earth readied themselves for a do-or-die counter-assault, hell-bent on making the aliens rue the day they invaded the solar system. The air stank of burnt earth and cooked meat as the hulking Traxidan soldiers stomped through the smoke. Their robotic limbs ripped through rubble, searching for breathing humans. Victor once quaked at the sight of blood. Now he armed soldiers with his shield tech. He worked with Colonel Hale. Hale's face showed focus as he had Victor equip each soldier. "Without these shields, our soldiers die. Remember, you're saving lives," Hale said gruffly, handing a shield to a young sergeant. Victor nodded, the weight of each life relying on his tech pressing down on him. Behind shattered walls, soldiers fired constantly at the inhuman howls of the enemy. The Traxidans responded ruthlessly, their guns shredding concrete like paper. The aliens had found Victor's gutted workshop in the chaos. Wires dangled from stripped machinery. Screens flickered their last glimpses of code and plans before going dark forever. The aliens searched the debris, realizing Victor's genius posed a threat. Underground, the resistance buzzed with energy in a makeshift command center. Civilians and soldiers pulled cables and recalibrated scanners, turning a storage bunker into their nerve center. Victor's shield pulsed at its heart. Scouts returned from the surface, eyes wide with news of Traxidan communication arrays. Victor seized the report, his mind racing to use his tech against them. "If we sync the pulse to their signal, we could knock them out." "Break their command chain," he whispered, his voice nearly lost in the hum of planning around him. Colonel Hale squeezed Victor's shoulder firmly, eyes hard but warm. "Get to it, son. We'll cover you. Give us a chance." Victor's fingers danced across his tablet, the codes and sequences aligning. Footsteps above reminded them the enemy approached, the hunt unrelenting until one side fell. "We've got one shot," Victor said, now a soldier among soldiers, their lives bound to his creation. "Ready the pulse." Hale nodded sharply, and humanity's future teetered on Victor's genius and the will to survive. Bullets flew from both sides as Victor and Hale ran across the broken concrete. With every step, they risked falling into an open grave. The sky over New Terra blazed red, lit up by fires and energy weapons. They weaved through the wreckage hidden by the chaos eating up the city. They reached the alien base, a twisted mass of metal and alien tech humming with ominous energy. Victor opened his toolkit, hands steady, despite the screams and explosions nearby. He spliced wires and typed codes, eyes locked on the holographic lock guarding the site. Hale covered him, picking off Traxidan scouts that came too close with quick shots. His rifle moved as if part of his arm, aim true despite the flickering shadows. Inside, the scene looked like a nightmare. Humans, gaunt and ghostly, hung chained up. The Traxidans poked and prodded them with cruel tools. They had turned the captives into lab experiments. Victor and Hale didn't react. They had seen too much already. The colonel blasted the locks off the prisoners' chains. "Move out! Now!" he ordered. Victor helped up the weakest ones. They found rifles for the soldiers, igniting anger in their eyes. "Let's destroy this place," a freed prisoner growled, clutching a stolen alien gun. The control room was a maze of alien consoles and blinking screens. Victor placed his device in the center, its core glowing with silent, destructive promise. "Out, out, go!" Hale shouted. They escaped through the twisting corridors, freed humans at their backs. The ground shook and the explosion's roar chased them. They burst outside, lungs gasping for air. Behind them, the command center became a rising mushroom cloud of fire and fury. Victor looked back and saw the enemy falter. The Traxidans stared at the sky, at each other, lost without orders. The humans attacked immediately, emboldened by the chaos. Word of the base's destruction spread faster than the smoke rising from the ruins. Human voices cheered around the globe. It was one victory in a war for survival, but it showed the galaxy that humans would not vanish quietly. More joined the resistance, united by the knowledge their enemy could bleed. Victor stared at the map. Flashing lights showed where people fought the Traxidans. His eyes looked tired but determined. Colonel Hale paced around. He pointed at possible attack spots across the city. "Quick attacks at dawn. Few casualties," Hale told everyone. They nodded, faces serious. These weren't just survivors now. They were an army. Victor went back to his workbench. Shields lay everywhere. He tweaked them into weapons. A soldering iron hissed as he connected wires. Smoke rose up. His tablet screen scrolled code as he programmed. This war weighed on him. His inventions saved lives but also took them. Victor's tablet beeped. Intel came in on a crashed Traxidan ship. His hands froze, the iron hovering in mid-air. "This is it. Get what we need. We can end this war," he said quietly. Night covered them as they reached the fallen ship. It looked like a dead beast, engines still steaming from battle. Traxidan drones swarmed the wreckage, desperate to reclaim it. Victor's modified shields wrapped the team like second skins, shimmering with his genius. They dodged shots, reached the hull breach. Bullets sparked off their barriers, proof of Victor's skills. Darkness filled the ship inside. Hale signaled, fists clenched, and they moved forward through pulsing alien halls. Human scientists hungered for the tech, to understand and use it. "Clear," a soldier whispered as they took the data core. Hands shook, extracting the enemy secrets. Victory waited in that data, the key to defeating them. The Traxidans attacked to reclaim their ship. Gunfire filled the air, shields flared, absorbing it. Emboldened by winds, the humans held their ground and fired back. Every shot carried a message. Earth would not yield. The aliens retreated as their numbers dropped under Hale's tactics. The humans struck hard, then vanished before payback. More Traxidan bodies littered the streets. Victor watched from afar, fingers twitching to join the fight. He'd given them the means to win, but hated the need for it. He turned back to his work, knowing they needed his mind and Hale's courage. Word of victory reached the base, lighting up faces with new hope. They gathered around, passing on the news. Earth's children, born of grit, weren't just surviving, they were winning. Humanity's fierce fight caught the attention of the Kaldorians. These aliens were also angry at the Traxidans. Kaldorian ships arrived at Earth suddenly. Colonel Hale stood in the command center, watching the Kaldorians come off their ship. They were tall, blue-skinned, with silver eyes. Hale sized them up, but didn't fully trust them. Victor paced, tapping his datapad. He said the Kaldorians had the tech to help win the war. Hale grunted, wary of possible betrayal. "We should team up. Your fight is strong. Our enemy is the same. Together, we can shift the balance," the Kaldorians said through their translators. They offered their advanced tech if the humans kept fighting hard. Holograms of energy shields, strong weapons, and data appeared on the walls. Victor's face lit up seeing the technology. He looked at Hale, urging him to act. Hale stayed cold, but nodded. "All right, let's talk," he said. The two groups made a plan, a weapon in itself. Kaldorian engineers came to human workshops. Victor eagerly studied the complex, detailed alien tech. Guided by the Kaldorians, his hands dove into the hardware. The Traxidans reacted with rage, threatening revenge. But the new human Kaldorian weapons turned soldiers into giants. The fierce humans now fought with even more power. The first battle after the alliance was electric. Human and Kaldorian soldiers stood together, holding the heavy new guns. The Traxidan base loomed ahead at sunrise. They nodded, understanding each other despite being from different worlds. They hit fast and hard, blasting through the dawn. The once tough Traxidan armor now crumpled under the combined attack. The disciplined Kaldorians fought alongside the gritty humans seamlessly. The Traxidans kept losing ground, unused to strong opposition. They stepped back, confused, then retreated. Some surrendered or ran for the first time. More and more defected. Amid the gunfire and ionized air, the Alliance pushed forward. They took back bases, depots, barracks. After each win, Human cheers met Caldorian calm. With the base secured, Hale allowed a tight smile, a rare approval. Victor watched the map bloom with regained land. Victory seemed real, concrete. They looked to the stars, the next fight calling. Dirt and sweat stuck to Victor's face as he crouched low behind the wall's rubble. He watched Colonel Hale yell at the troops. Hale pointed to the front, sending soldiers with rifles on their shoulders forward. Boots pounded the ground loudly. "Move, move, move!" Hale's voice cut through the noise of the fight. He stood tall, steady, amid the mess. Sleek alien ships glided overhead through the smoke. Their guns blasted fire at the base's walls. The metal fort pockmarked from past attacks. Soldiers ducked, their new shields humming, pushing back the alien barrage. Victor followed close, clutching his device, the result of endless work. He sprinted cover to cover. Loud cracks of guns echoed, along with the sizzle of lasers and booms of bombs. He slid next to a heavy gunner, spitting hot lead at the enemy. Victor watched the man's steady hands sweep the gun side to side. "We've got them running." The gunner grinned through gritted teeth. The wall crumbled under their combined fire. The air smelled like ozone and burnt metal. Fueled by rage, soldiers stormed the breach. Victor followed, heart hammering his ribs, the base inside a labyrinth of crates and machines. Fierce gunfire echoed the steel halls. Victor passed soldiers grabbing supplies, wire coils, power packs, ammo. They worked quick, filling bags, pushing full carts back. In a brief pause, Victor saw a young soldier holding a hurt friend, their blood mixing with the oil below. The wounded soldier, pale but holding on, resilient. Victor's tablet beeped with an alert. He read the report, blood running cold. The aliens escalating, building a city killer, a doomsday weapon. He found Hale in the makeshift command, maps on the table. "We have to stop them," Victor said, tablet shaking in hand. "They're building something catastrophic." Hale narrowed his eyes. "I was afraid of this," he muttered. They stood silent, the weight settling over them like the dust from the crumbled walls. Around them, the battle softened, a short break to regroup. Hale straightened, decision made. "We hit them. Hard and fast before they can unleash hell." Victor nodded, understanding the gravity. This next move meant victory or doom. They gathered a strike team, soldiers with flint eyes. Hale outlined the bold plan on the map. "We take the fight to their fleet, now or never." Victor returned to his bench, modifying gear, refining code, mind racing about the strike. Around him, soldiers loaded fresh clips, checked shield straps, faces blending fear and courage. They fought not just for Earth now, but for tomorrow. Victor worked in his workshop, focused completely on his project. Blueprints covered the desk, scribbled with notes. His hands constantly tapped keys and twisted wires. Metal pinged as his assistant secured panels on the disruptor prototype. Sweat beaded Victor's forehead from the heat and pressure. He used tweezers to fit a microchip into the disruptor's motherboard. His intense eyes followed each movement closely, showing his determination and grief. Victor's hands shook slightly from exhaustion, but he fought to keep them steady. A screen blinked with dots marking Traxidan ships surrounding Earth. Victor studied their paths, calculating where to place his disruptors. The door opened and Colonel Hale entered with Lieutenant Sarah Knox and others. Sarah met Victor's eyes, communicating their shared duty. "We ready, Victor?" Hale's voice cut through the noise. "Nearly. I need to calibrate in orbit. The patrols..." Victor started. Sarah stepped up, holding a device. "We'll handle it," she said, showing orbit maps. "We move on your word." Victor nodded. "Be careful." His short order held care. Sarah smirked slightly. "Always am." Victor turned back to the screen, hovering over the launch button. The click sent the cloaked disruptors into orbit silently. Meanwhile, Hale entered the command center with a map showing enemy locations in pulsating red. Soldiers checked gear, energy shields glowing, rifles ready, their faces hardened with battle grit. Hale traced the map. "We strike at dawn, the flagship," he said roughly. "This ends here." The soldiers nodded, resolve stiffening their posture. They departed with Caldorian allies, unified in survival. In his workshop, Victor keyed final commands. The disruptors settled into orbit, a network of dormant power. His screen showed their patterns, human defiance constellated in space. Above, Sarah deliberately moved in zero gravity, aligning frequencies on her device. Around her floated the silent vastness of space. The disruptors activated, rippling out invisible shields between Earth and its enemies. Below, the ground team awaited the signal, the plan hinging on the disruptors' success. In the command center, Hale stood rigid, eyeing the stars where Sarah worked. A small nod acknowledged the disruptor's success on his wrist communicator. "All units, move out." His voice heralded the coming battle. The assault force surged forward with determination and steel. Victor watched the reports come in. The disruptors functioning flawlessly. Fear and pride tightened his chest. Their work had led to this moment. Above, Sarah re-entered Earth's atmosphere, her duty complete. Her team followed in fiery arcs across the dawn, thoughts on those below. On Earth, the force crept toward the looming flagship. Soldiers held breath, nearing victory or doom. The fierce battle's outcome was uncertain, but humanity's fire, forged in Victor's genius, Hale's leadership, and Sarah's bravery could not be easily extinguished. They would face the enemy with Earth's resolve. Sarah snapped her helmet on. The hangar echoed with the final click. Her team checked their dark armor. They knew the drill's cold. Silence pressed in from space outside the warship. Only mission chatter broke it. "Disruptors live," said Victor over comms. Crisp, steady. "Skies are yours." Hale watched from the command center. Screens showed the team loading up. Weapons powered on with hums and clicks. Training was hardcore. Sims put them through it all in space combat. They rolled and dove in zero-G, learned to maneuver in bulky suits, fired controlled bursts, knocked away fake debris, stayed tight, calling out just like in the projected battles versus Traxidans. The Kaldorians watched apart. The humans whispered about them. But duty came first now. They had to unite against the threat. The hangar doors shuddered open. Black space and far stars showed. Pilots settled into the ships. Kaldorian fighters lined up. Engines glowed soft blue. "Coordinate set, formation ready, escort us in," said a pilot. Eyes on the Traxidan warships ahead. Victor stayed in mission control, hands dancing on the keyboard, watching trajectories, tuning frequencies, monitoring disruptors, breathing measured, blinking calculated. "We are clear for launch," he said. A thin sweat shone on his face. "Strike true." The ships leapt forward, silence shattered. In the lead ship, Sarah's team traded hard nods, vows without words, for their planet, their people, each other. Hale stood in command, arms crossed. The ships knifed through space on his screens. Black on the stars, the Kaldorians moved with them, comforting, unsettling. "Stay sharp, they'll spot us soon," Hale muttered. To himself and his troops. Alarms blared. The Traxidan perimeter breached. Space erupted with enemy fire. Whips of energy lashed out. The human ship spun and twisted away, just like the Sims. Sarah tightened her grip on her rifle. Victor's voice buzzed instructions in her earpiece. Updates on defenses, shield strength, the battle rhythm that would see them through. The flagship swelled ahead, blistered with cannons and bays, lights blinking like eyes, the heart of the Traxidan threat. "Target ahead," the pilot called. "Brace for breach." A jolt rocked the ship. They clung tight to the flagship hull. The soldiers readied themselves. What came next would decide Earth's fate. "Breach achieved." "You're in," said Victor. "Go." The doors exploded inward. Soldiers stormed the flagship. Gunfire and yells echoed in the tight space, the symphony of survival, of refusal to surrender. The Kaldorians flew on. Deadly grace amid the chaos. Allies today, intentions hidden. Hale watched the advance on screen. He murmured orders, directed backup, kept his voice steady amid the storm. Above, the stars saw Earth's fate fought for, by those who carried home in their hearts. Who would spend everything for a tomorrow? Hale stared hard at the battle outside the viewport. Traxidan warships fired beams of energy at the human fleet. Hale's knuckles tightened around the armrests of the command chair. "Stay in formation," he yelled over the chaos. "Kaldorians, Break left now! The Kaldorian ships turned sharply, pulling away from the Traxidan attack. The human fighters accelerated, flying across the enemy's line of fire. On her screen, Sarah tracked the incoming data. Her finger hovered over the control stick, focused despite the sweat on her forehead. "Stay with me," she said into the comm. "We only get one shot." Her team echoed back, ready to follow her lead. Back on Earth, Victor scanned the code showing ship movements. His fingers flew across the keys as he gave commands. "Delta team, 2 enemies behind you. Move unpredictably now." Delta Squadron zigzagged at his word, dodging the attack. A Traxidan cruiser took a direct hit, the core exploding silently in space. Hale and Sarah hurried through the flagship halls, boots pounding the metal deck. Kaldorian soldiers moved with them, shields blocking otherwise deadly hits. Human and alien tech worked together flawlessly. They reached the control room. "Get that door open!" Hale yelled. Sarah knelt by the door panel, rewiring it quickly as she counted down in her heed. With a hiss, the door slid open to reveal the weapon control room. The Traxidan officer inside turned in surprise. Before it could act, Sarah's shot echoed in the closed space. The officer fell, its hand inches from the activation switch. Ignoring the adrenaline, Sarah moved to the console with steady hands. Following Victor's instructions, she typed rapidly, unraveling the weapon's code layers. On Earth, Victor watched the weapon signals fade. "It's offline," he said, relief heavy in his voice. "Secure the area," Hale told his team. "We're not done." Disabling the flagship sent confusion through the Traxidan fleet. Victor monitored their chaotic channels. Surrounded by their team, Hale and Sarah saw the lifeless controls. This was more than a victory. Earth had proven its resolve. Smoke came out of the Traxidan flagship. The fire blackened the ship's body. Ash and trash floated away into space. Inside the command center, the human leaders looked around. They watched the screens and the wrecked ship outside. Victor leaned on a station. The screen's light shined on his face. Colonel Hale stood stiff with his hands on the table. Tension filled the air while they read the alien message. "Think hard about this offer," one person said. "We could end the war today. No more deaths." Others disagreed strongly. "Make them surrender or nothing," one woman said firmly. "Justice for Earth must be complete." Everyone argued loudly. Some wanted peace, others wanted justice. Victor spoke up. "Let's not hurry," he said. He looked at Hale for support. "They're still strong. One lash could hurt us. Caution means safety." Hale nodded. "He's right," Hale announced. The room went quiet. "We make the terms to protect Earth now and later." His words rang with authority from past victories. Talks with the Traxidans started. Their form flickered on the screen, blurred for secrecy. Guttural sounds echoed as they spoke. "Let us withdraw in peace," they said. "Then no more fighting." Hale studied the form. "Only if we check disarming. Every ship, every gun, plus your technology," he demanded. The form rippled. "We need time to decide." Victor watched the patterns. He saw stalling tactics. His fingers hovered over his station, ready to warn the others. Hidden near their broken ship, the Traxidans whispered. They had a secret weapon to turn defeat into destruction. But for now, both sides weighed their next moves. The talks went on. Everyone knew whatever happened next, Earth would stand ready. Victor hunched over the console. His fingers typed fast. Data flashed across the screen. Victor read it. He waved Hale over. Hale came. "Read this," Victor said. Hale read the data, his eyes focused on the repeating words, "the cleansing fire." "They're planning something," Victor said. "This isn't just talk." Hale's jaw tightened. He understood. The ceasefire and the negotiations were fake. The command center became busy fast. Hale yelled orders. Officers ran to their stations. "Stop the withdrawal talks," Hale said. "Demand their military info now." On the screen, the fuzzy Traxidan appeared. "We won't be intimidated," it said. Then the transmission ended. Alarms blared red. On the screen, the fleet of slick, evil-looking drones hovered in space. The Traxidans had shown their hand. The cleansing fire. Victor's mind raced. Hale looked at him, his face urgent. "We've got to move, Victor. What do we do?" Victor looked up, picturing the satellite disruptors above. "The disruptors," he said. "I can recalibrate them as a shield to scramble the drone signals." Hale nodded. "Do it. I'll get the counterattack ready. We need time." Victor typed fast, sending commands to the silent disruptors above. Each keystroke raced against the drones coming to Earth. The control room waited quietly as Victor finished typing. All eyes went up, watching the screens for signs of the shield. A hum filled the room as the disruptors activated in a new pattern, pulsing with unseen power, embracing the planet below. The drones stumbled, their signals disrupted. Hale watched, then gave the order to strike. Shouts erupted. Soldiers ran to their ships, a blur against the heavy moment. The counterattack launched, rising to meet the chaos above. In the control room, Victor stayed poised over the keyboard, sweat on his brow but resolve in his eyes, watching, adjusting, keeping the shield strong. The sky flashed with the lights of battle, Earth's future uncertain, on the edge of doom or a hard-won chance to live. Victor typed the final lines of code. The shield would soon turn on. Engineers watched monitors, showing drones closing in on Earth. Their fingers tapped keys, preparing the sequence. "When will the shield start?" Victor asked, eyes glued to the screen. Dots marked the drones coming closer each second. "2 lines of code left," an engineer replied. Her hands stayed steady as she worked. Victor nodded without looking away from the drones. Each meant destruction. Each could end humanity's last stand. On the ground, soldiers fired rifles at the aliens. Explosions shook the Earth. Debris filled the air where homes once stood. Soldiers glanced at each other. They knew this battle could finish them. But their shots kept the enemy back. They kept fighting. In the lab, the final code turned a light green. Victor let out his held breath. His finger hovered over the button to start the shield. "Now," he said and pressed it. The room waited, watching space. The icons for the disruptors blinked on one by one, an invisible shield wrapped around Earth. The drones heading for the planet suddenly changed course. Their signals failed. They crashed into each other, drifting away from Earth. On the alien ship, officers shouted in confusion. Their perfect attack fell apart. The drones now floated randomly around Earth. Victor's team let out a restrained cheer. The threat disappeared before their eyes. In the war room, Colonel Hale stayed focused on the map. "Counterattack," he ordered firmly. The soldiers felt the battle shift. Their radios came alive with Hale's commands. They charged ahead with new energy. They pushed into weak points in the enemy lines. The aliens, stunned by the drone failure, took fire from the fierce human counterattack. They lost ground quickly. Victory cheers echoed from human forces worldwide. But they kept their eyes open. The aliens still held territory on Earth. Victor leaned on a console, exhausted from endless days of work. But his eyes shone with the light of victory against impossible odds. Earth had survived this battle. The human spirit remained unbroken, ready to reclaim their world one fight at a time. Victor tapped fast on the glowing keyboard. The domes of energy blocked the alien bombs. They exploded into nothing outside the cities. His face shone blue in the monitor lights. He had one goal: stop the aliens taking more of Earth. In the old gym room, Colonel Hale leaned on the table. Maps and papers lay everywhere. Soldiers stood around him, armor clinking. He pointed at the map. "Here, here, and here," he said. "We hit them from all sides at your 600. His soldiers nodded and passed on the orders. Sarah Knox stood at the maps. Dirt smeared her face. Her mind raced with attack plans. She pointed at the map. "When we hit here, their main force will come out. We cut off their escape." Risky, but it could work. The humans and Kaldorians were one force now. They knew each other's faces in the foxholes. They had one shared goal. Their unity gave them strength. Officers stared at the screen, waiting. "Got it," one said finally. Supply lines appeared, the alien network of fragile threads. Hale stepped forward, looking close. He pointed. "This is it, the choke point." Taking it down would force their surrender. Everyone agreed. Resolve burned. They made plans carefully. Soldiers and Kaldorians checked gear and weapons. They painted camo on their faces. They moved in silence, boots thudding promise of the fight. Victor stayed at his post as his fingers danced. He fed updates to the squads. His eyes never left the screens. Each defense energized him. Each inch regained brought victory closer. At dawn, the battle erupted. Explosions and gunfire split the air. Sarah Knox's voice cut through on comms, guiding them through the fog and noise. "Push through! Flank them now!" Gunfire, engines, troops, the sounds of freedom. The Traxidans retreated, surrounded, scattered. In the command center, the map changed. More cities marked safe, freed from the aliens. Hale watched his soldiers close in. Once unwinnable, now the war could be won. Human tenacity and teamwork. Above all, Victor's disruptors stood guard in space. A silent promise. No more harm would come to Earth. The heavy boots of Hale's soldiers kicked up dust as they crouched behind the jagged rocks. The convoy road cut through the broken land before them. Ruined towns dotted the landscape, reminders of war's cost. "Check weapons." Hale growled, barely heard over the tugging wind. His soldiers clicked off safeties with mud-stained hands. Trained in stealth, their job was to strike and vanish. In a lab, Victor typed on keyboards flashing alien codes. Precision guided his fingers as he tapped the engineer's fearful mind. Words trickled out, but Victor stayed focused, pulling every detail. At his signal, the command center flipped a switch, green lights blinking. His latest virus now infected the enemy network. The convoy rumbled into view, armored carriers spewing dust clouds. At the signal on their wrists, the soldiers leapt from hiding. Bombs detonated with precision, ripping the convoy's sides. Metal shrieked as vehicles halted, communications jammed by Victor's code. Elsewhere, Sarah led her squad through a collapsed building's remains, using it as cover. She had memorized the gaps in surveillance. Nearby, bulky soldiers patrolled, unaware of the hidden humans. Sarah signaled and plasma lit up the darkening sky. Her disciplined team took down the startled guards. Chaos ensued inside the perimeter as Sarah's squad dismantled defenses. Soon, the path to the base lay exposed. Her squad's faces were set with resolve. This was the breakthrough needed to strike the enemy's heart. The ground war had turned. Humans clawed back their world inch by inch. Captured words were a beacon of hope, guiding them to strike where weakest. "Hold position," Hale's voice crackled over comms. He peered through binoculars at the milling, disarrayed troops. It was working. The special units had done their job. Now they waited. Victor kept watch on the crippled enemy network, pride surging. Their technology, will, and spirit still held strong. Sarah's mind raced with the next phase as orders buzzed over the radio. This breach was just the beginning. They would press on until the last invader left their world. They had won today, but tomorrow waited, hungry for victory. They would be ready. Dust kicked up as soldiers marched across the empty field. Hale looked out from behind a sharp rock, binoculars to his eyes. In the distance, the hum of enemy planes mixed with the buzz of Victor's drones above. "Get ready," Hale yelled. Soldiers and aliens stopped and listened. Guns clicked off safety. The huge enemy base stood ahead, guns and sensors on its walls. It was the last obstacle, a beast of metal. Victor worked controls at a makeshift post nearby. His fingers moved fast, guiding the drones through the sky in careful patterns. "Ready on your word, Colonel," Victor's voice crackled in Hale's earpiece. "Go on my mark," Hale replied, gripping his gun. He watched the enemy planes take off, engines loud. The first bomb hit the base's shield with a bright flash. Soldiers flinched but held ground, eyes forward. Sarah crouched with her unit, rifle familiar in her hands. She met her squad's eyes and whispered into her radio, "Go left on my word." The ground forces charged, determined. Enemy ships screamed past, dropping bombs. Explosions ripped the air, the ground shaking. Hale yelled, "Now!" Sarah sprinted left, her squad behind her, blurs of motion. The enemy scrambled to react. Victor's hands moved with purpose, directing the drones. Striking now. The drones swooped in, weaving through the chaos. They hit weak spots Victor had found, explosions along the walls. A hole appeared, metal twisting. Sarah's team rushed through, firing around them. The surprised enemies shot wildly in panic. Sarah moved deliberately, each shot counting. Her team echoed her, surviving and attacking. Inside, victory was close. Hale's forces fought fiercely. The towering Kaldorians joined the close combat. The control room was near, the enemy's center. Sarah pushed on, her team behind her. Victor guided them, drones above. They secured the room, overwhelmed enemies. Earth soldiers and Kaldorians stood among consoles, symbols of fallen enemy power. Victory had cost lives, the ground was scarred, bodies still. But holding the base, they felt the war shift. Hale entered, face hardened. "We hold this ground," he commanded firmly. They nodded, eyes burning with triumph. It was not the end, but a pivotal win. Earth's spirit, unbroken, had faced the enemy and stood victorious. Securing the base, they knew the blow would echo through history. Hale stood at the edge of the fallen command base. Smoke rose from alien tech scattered among the ruins. He stepped over a smashed console, boots crunching glass. His radio crackled. "Echo team here, north clear, no hostiles." Hale grunted acknowledgement. "All units tighten up, sweep every building." He went outside. The grey sky gloomy over the battlefield. Clusters of fighters fired wildly, afraid to die. Humans advanced in formation through debris. Silent Kaldorians flanked them, armor reflecting dim light, weapons lethal. Victor stood atop a vehicle, wiping grime from his hands. Eyes ringed by dark circles stayed fixed on a tablet, analyzing data. He looked like a man with no sleep, yet relief glinted in his gaze as drones hovered protectively above. Their presence a reminder the tide had turned. A soldier approached, saluting sharply. "Sir, disruptors holding steady. Maintain power." Victor nodded. "Keep them running. No slip-ups until they're all gone." He paused, eyes closed briefly. Thoughts of his past lab flooded in, unfinished projects, dreams of building a better future. That hope now seemed closer, just within reach. Nox emerged from the ruins, rifle slung over her shoulder, uniform torn and singed. Troops parted as she walked, respect on their faces. She'd led the charge, outflanked the enemy, been key in capturing the base. She reached Hale, serious. "Area's secure, Colonel, but prisoner chatter about regrouping." Hale's eyes narrowed. "Location?" "Uncertain, but they're planning something. Can't drop our guard." Hale turned to the Kaldorian commander, towering figure with polished stone skin. "Get your squad ready. We strike if they regroup. No second chance." The Kaldorian nodded slowly. "We will be ready, Colonel." "Our fates united." Back at command, officers barked orders. Runners dashed with reports. Victor approached Hale, tablet in hand. "I've sent scouts to monitor frequencies. We'll hear them breathe." Hale clapped Victor's back. "Good work. You're a damn fine soldier. Helped save humanity." Victor smiled thinly. "Just doing my part, sir." He looked skyward, where disruptors circled Earth like angels. The end was near. He could feel it. But first they had to finish this. For all who'd fallen, who still dreamed of peace, the final battle loomed, and they stood ready to face it together as Earth's defenders. The ground was dusty red on Mars. Men and aliens made defenses under the giant mountain Olympus Mons. Craters dotted the landscape from the fighting. It spilled from Earth. Victor read reports on his screen. Spies were in the enemy ranks. He called Hale on a secure line. "They're gathering to die for this rock," he said. Hale stood firm in the command center. It was made from old spaceship parts. The weight of the coming battle pressed down. "We end them here," Hale said in a steel voice. Sarah Knox stood apart. Her shadow stretched long on the metal floor. "I'll lead the ground forces," she said sharply. Hale looked at Sarah and nodded fast. "Get your squad ready. Mars will be ours by nightfall." Victor worked the interface as he customized the assault specs. Rovers lined up with big gripping wheels, engines idling. The suits for Mars hung in rows, boots already red with dust. Victor checked each rover was ready for the harsh ground. He inspected the reinforced metal, running scenarios in his mind. The bulky Kaldorians needed bigger, tougher suits. He added more insulation to their gear. Sarah watched her troops suit up. She moved through them, checking harnesses and oxygen. Her commands were clear as she made sure they were ready. The rovers roared to life, hungry metal beasts. The troops boarded, hatches sealing shut. Victor watched from a distance, thinking of the enemy's power. Hale's voice crackled over the radio. "They're fighting to survive. No mercy expected." "Understood, Colonel. We're ready," Sarah replied with confidence. Her rover led them out. The rovers advanced in clouds of iron dust toward Olympus Mons' shadow. The silent giant watched them move to fight their shared foe. Kaldorian ships cut the thin sky overhead. The battlefield grew closer, shapes and defenses on the rusty ground. Tension filled the air, like the dust coating their lungs. Sarah's eyes stayed fixed ahead at the enemy. Rover engines blended with artillery rumbling to life, a grim soundtrack of war on the empty planet. In the red haze, humans and Kaldorians stood united. This day would decide two worlds' fates. In silence they advanced, ready to end the war. Earth's survival hung in the balance. Beneath Olympus Mons' gaze they would fight to reclaim Mars. The dropships screamed in, engines roaring as they hit the thin Martian sky. Colonel Hale squinted out the window at the rugged red land below. Networks of metal and stone crisscrossed the surface like old battle scars. Explosions erupted. Reinforced turrets burst out from underground, firing into the dropships. Alarms flashed. Sensors showed the hidden guns. Hale's soldiers landed hard, kicking up red dust. Their steps pressed down with the fierce pull of gravity and the gravity of their mission. They fought not just for ground, but for the future. Everyone grasped the stakes. They raced between bursts of artillery, dodging the constant barrage. Sarah Knox yanked the wheel, steering the grinding treads over rock and craters. She stared through the thick window, tracking the chaos outside. Her commands were sharp and clear. "Go left! Push up the middle! Use the crags!" In the command center, Victor hovered over screens, tracking the soldiers. Their vitals and ammo blinked on his display. He muttered guidance, directing drones to shield the troops. He relayed holes in the enemy grid to Sarah's radio. The cold Martian sands shook under man and alien alike. They scrambled between cover, trading disciplined fire, advancing through the merciless storm of shrapnel and flames. Their unified training emerged through the hardship. They moved as one, survival and aggression entwined. A Traxidan leader charged with spiraling energy weapon in hand. Sarah's heart raced. "Focus fire on their commander," she ordered. "Take him down!" Sights found the leader. The air cracked with bullets and beams. The commander staggered and fell with a thud, arms splayed wide. "Easy fire." Haley's voice cut sharply across all bands. As allies secured the captive, a chance at peace emerged. The troops regrouped around the high-ranking prisoner, fatigue and hope playing across their faces. Even through the bloodshed, victory flickered. The sands settled, marked by war's echoes. In the command center, Victor relaxed his shoulders. Sarah wiped grime from her brow but kept eyes vigilant. The battle raged. The test of wills endured. And in the red Martian soil, they stood at the precipice of ending this war. The Traxidan sat tied to a chair in the metal room under Olympus Mons. Sweat dripped down his green skin as humans and Kaldorians surrounded him. Colonel Hale stared from across the table, face stern, as Victor turned on the recorder. "Speak," Hale said without emotion. The Traxidan opened his mouth, showing jagged teeth. His voice came out a growl translated into broken English. "You think you won? Wrong. Earth was a test. Bigger fleet comes. They'll finish the job." Hale glanced at the Kaldorian leader. Their eyes showed the seriousness. Aides rushed out to call Earth Command. Victor studied star maps and fleet movements on screens. His mind raced with scenarios and chances. Sarah Knox leaned over a table with Mars and Earth holograms spinning. Her face showed determination. "We hit them first," she said loudly. "We have the power. We have the Kaldorians. Wait, and it's too late." Hale stood at the window watching dust dance on the red plains. "Think cost," he said. "A first strike could save or ruin us." Silence filled the room as commanders, pilots, and soldiers waited for the call. Victor stepped up, eyes bright with an idea. "Mars," he said. "Make it our base. Strengthen defenses. Use it against them. Mars becomes shield and sword." Hale nodded, a plan forming. Bold, dangerous, but might work. Meetings followed, plans drawn. Mars, once a colony, now key to human survival. The ground they stood on would be the front line. Soldiers left with fresh orders. Mars' orbit now bristled with new turrets and jammers, while engineers strengthened bases. Construction rumbled under Olympus Mons. Victor's hands moved with purpose, guiding techs on defenses. "Boost north, double mines, Sector 5, he said, steadily and clearly. Sleek Kaldorian ships stood guard, cannons skyward. Soldiers patrolled the red landscape with crisp steps, rifles ready. Maps flickered in command with constant data. Officers barked commands as scouts called the enemy fleet position, each move calculated, each second precious. They turned Mars' dusty dunes into a bastion against the coming threat, a race against time, against doom from the stars. At the heart, human and alien united, eyes to the horizon, where war came from space. Mars shook with the rumble of mining rigs. Victor pulled his goggles tight, directing engineers as they turned the massive machines into defenses. Sparks erupted as welders fused generators onto steel, building a maze to trap attackers. "Secure those couplings, the shields must hold," Victor shouted over the roar, his fingers dancing to adjust power levels. Nearby, the towering Kaldorians set up their own deadly weapons, energy barrels aimed at the sky, ready to blast enemy ships. Colonel Hale walked the growing fortifications, map flickering in hand. He scanned the traps and guns, missing nothing. "More mines to the west," he told a lieutenant. "It's exposed." The officer saluted and relayed the order. In the hangar, Sarah checked her flight suit seals before joining her squadron. Her pilots made final checks as she briefed them.
"Hit them hard, don't stop till they're dust." Her voice rang clear over their comms. "We've trained for this. We can show them what humanity can do."
In the command center, a buzz filled the air amid planning. Officers clustered around screens with Kaldorian strategists, plotting moves with precision. The smell of hot metal hung outside, a reminder of their power and the coming fight. Humans and Kaldorians felt the weight of anticipation, resolve pulsing like a heartbeat through the base. "We're not just defending Mars," Hale told his troops, his voice steady. "We're defending our future. They wanted war. We'll give them war." The soldiers and warriors stood firm, stars reflected in their eyes. Their unified determination burned bright and fierce. "Humanity, fuck yeah," one voice shouted. Then a dozen, then hundreds echoing off mountains. Defiance was alive and ready to meet the enemy. Hale's face showed the lines of past battles as he surveyed the combined human and Kaldorian space fleets. His voice firm, he said, "Keep tight formations. I want no gaps for the Traxidans to slip through." On Mars below, Victor worked to integrate salvaged enemy tech into hybrid human Traxidan weapons. His breath fogged his faceplate as he welded and calibrated, focused completely on his task. The red soil swallowed each completed weapon, seeds of future victory. "Power levels ready," he confirmed. "Defense grid fully operational." In space, Sarah Knox danced her interceptor through asteroids and along Mars's gravity well. The red planet filled her cockpit viewport, watching over her like a silent guardian. Her squadron comm crackled as she said, "Hit hard, hit fast, leave the Traxidans chasing ghosts." Lasers lit up the blackness as her ships ambushed the unsuspecting Traxidan scouts. Engines hummed and weapons pulsed. The Traxidans spun, confused, as the humans appeared from nowhere, struck, and vanished again. In the command center, strategists traced the Traxidan armada's path, plotting its destruction. Quiet commands and tapping keyboards filled the room. One officer pointed at the holographic map. "We spring the trap here and here." Outside, mines floated, silent and deadly. The vanguard sailed toward them, into the snare set by human and Kaldorian hands. The first mine exploded soundlessly, a silent firework of resistance. Skirmishes erupted, the prelude to the final battle. Shots rang out, steel on steel. The smooth Kaldorian ships cut through the aliens, emboldened by Earth's spirit. Victor monitored the sensors, tracking each skirmish, each retreat. The armada approached blind, unaware of the waiting steel web. Sarah banked sharply from another successful strike. "Keep them guessing," she said. "We're the hammer in the wind." Mars stood ready, braced for the assault. The dust settled as the moment of destiny approached. Human and Kaldorian alike knew the next battle would ignite the galaxy. Hale watched, pride and determination fueling his resolve. They would meet the storm and emerge victorious, or not at all. Echoing through the base, the cry rose: "Humanity, fuck yeah!" A call to arms, a shout of defiance, the unbreakable roar of Earth's children, ready to defend their future against the coming dark. The red Martian ground was quiet. Soldiers waited, breaths foggy with anticipation. Colonel Hale walked in front of the defense grid. He was ready to give the signal. The Earth and Kaldorian ships hid together, ready to fight back. Engines rumbled softly across Mars's rocky surface. Inside the hub, Victor stood with the warp gate. Cables ran from it like veins. The huge, smooth Kaldorian structure hummed with power. It was ready. Kaldorians and humans worked side by side, once unthinkable before the war. Tools clanked. Commands shot back and forth. The final checks locked into place. Hale came over, jaw tense. "Make it work, Victor. This has to work," he said. Victor wiped grease on his jumpsuit. "It'll work, Colonel. They won't see it coming." Exhaustion circled his eyes, but determination burned inside. Then it happened fast. The fleet surged from orbit as the warp gate roared. It opened, energy swirling. Ships vanished and reappeared on the Traxidan side. In the hub, screens showed the repositioned ships. Kaldorian and human voices shouted battle prep. The gate snapped shut, leaving the sky quiet a blink. Chaos exploded in space. The surprise worked. Traxidan ships spun, trapped between enemies. Lasers streaked the blackness visible from Mars. Kaldorian ships darted and struck. Human pilots dove and twisted tightly. Below, soldiers loaded up, shielded by Victor's creations. They held rifles, watching screens or the light show above. Flashes lit their faces. Grips on weapons tightened. Silent prayers for comrades in space. Victor kept eyes on the battle and the defenses. "More power there, that flank's open," he told a technician, pointing at a monitor spot. Hale listened to reports come in. A hint of a smile appeared. "Press them. Don't let up," he commanded. The Earth Kaldorian ships pushed hard, relentless. The Traxidans couldn't regroup against the pincer attack. Ships fell, victory shifting under Olympus Mon's gaze. Humanity stood strong with allies. The ground forces held fast as comrades battled overhead. Each flash and bright cut reminded them of the stakes. They would not break. They would show the galaxy that united. Humanity would never yield. "Steady," Victor told the soldiers. They nodded, resolute. "Fuck yeah," echoed in their hearts, the battle cry of the ages. People across Earth stared at screens big and small. Space appeared empty in the public square screens, but ships darted and weaved. A child on his dad's shoulders frowned as the crowd frowned. Newsmen talked, mixed with people's murmurs as two fleets fought Traxidan ships around Earth. "Aim steady," a vet said, hands on a recruit. Another watched militia reload. "Faster," she said. In space, Traxidan ships broke through. Human and Kaldorian ships fell back. Colonel Hale ordered all to fall back to Mars. In Mars Command, Victor and Sarah watched. Ships blinked. Traxidan ships pushed hard. Victor rerouted power. "On screen," Sarah told the militia. "We'll need you." Traxidan dreadnoughts blasted the fleet. Ships evaded. Fire laced space. "Fall back to Mars," the colonel radioed. Ships withdrew toward the red planet. Victor and Sarah nodded readiness. A pilot flew steady, hands steady, warnings loud. Below, a young soldier clutched his rifle, watching the sky. "Steady," Sarah said. "Bring them to us." Ships streaked down through the dusk. Traxidans followed. "Defense is ready," Victor said. "Time to show them hell." The sky over Mars was like a coiled spring ready to burst. Colonel Hale spoke into his comm, sounding calm. "Fall back to the planet. Make them think we've lost." The ships danced back, engines firing as they neared the rusty ground. On the surface, Victor stared at the monitor. The armada approached. He hovered his hand over the button, counted the seconds under his breath. "Wait for it. Hold. Now." He slammed his finger down. The defenses came alive. Turrets swiveled and locked on targets. They spit hot metal into space. Energy cannons powered by Kaldorian tech fired searing beams that sliced through hulls. Kaldorian ships darted around the confused enemy. They appeared and disappeared using warp jumps, always one step ahead. Their tactics were disorienting and devastating. Victor saw the destruction clearly. The enemy ships staggered under the barrage. They tried to react, but it was too late. The defense was merciless. Explosions bloomed in space. Balls of fire extinguished quickly without air. Crippled ships fell toward Mars, crashing in plumes of red dust. Sarah watched another ship break apart. She grinned fiercely in her flight suit. "Keep hitting them!" Her shout echoed through the command center. The soldiers cheered as their weapons laid waste. The planning and drills had paid off. The debris field above was proof. Surviving ships struggled vainly to retreat from the trap. The defenders knew they had them. Colonel Hale allowed a moment of pride. "Every ship, every soul here has changed this war." He turned to the bright-eyed officers. "Press them. This is where we win." Mars witnessed the shifting tide of battle. The once unstoppable armada now fell in flames. The defiant roar of humanity rose up as they seized the day. Humanity! Fuck yeah! The room buzzed. Monitors flashed data from the space battle. Eyes traced lines. Fingers paused on key points. Whispers of hope and plans were shared. They had pushed the enemy back, but barely. Victor stood at the edge, holograms of drones flickering before him, hundreds of them swarming like bees. He tapped controls, refining their attack patterns. He had synced their deadly dance to dodge and weave through defenses, targeting the heart of the enemy fleet, the core that sent out orders. "We've got something," said an analyst. All eyes turned. Numbers flashed as the display zoomed in, a steady pulse, like a beacon. "Their command ship." Hale's voice was sharp, focused. "Could be their weak spot." Victor's drones recalibrated. He locked in the coordinates, confidence growing. "I'll send the drones there. Taking it out could cripple them." In the corner, Sarah stood with arms folded, gaze intense. "I'll lead the pilots. I trust Victor's tech with my life. We'll shield those drones or die trying." Hale nodded. The plan turned to action. Engineers rushed to launch drones, armed with Victor's latest tricks. The hangar buzzed, prepping the last of Earth's ships. Each pilot knew this was it. In mission control, techs focused on their screens, faces taut, linking to the drones, testing controls, preparing for anything. Victor oversaw it all as the checks went green. "Systems are good," his voice steady. Sarah donned her flight suit, snug against her skin. She checked her helmet seal out of habit. Around her, the pilots followed her lead, disciplined in their routines. In orbit, the fleet drifted in silence, guarding from any scouts that dared come close. "Hit hard and fast," Sarah said over comms. "Then get out." Her pilots clicked affirmations. On the surface, Victor watched silver specks launch into the void. "Drones away," he said, the only sound in mission control. At the window, Hale watched the distant battlefield, a silhouette against the stars. "This has to work," he whispered. As the drones climbed to strike the heart of the enemy fleet, the fate of Earth and Mars hung by a thread. Below, soldiers gripped their rifles and prayed. Their anthem, their hope, humanity, fuck yeah. "Hit them now," Colonel Hale barked into the comm. Below, the roar of Mars cannons shook the air. Fire blasted from the barrels. The shots tore through the thin Martian sky, bright streaks cutting across the blackness. Each blast against the void promised defiance. In her cockpit, Sarah gripped the stick tight, breathing steady. Around her, the squadron moved as one, ships slipping through enemy fire. Eyes locked ahead, flying together. Victor watched from the command hub, heart racing. His fingers moved quick, sending out drones with lethal aim. His creations, promises of payback, gliding past Traxidan ships. In their hulls, not just bombs, but justice. Around the Traxidan flagship, space swelled with chaos. Fighters clashed. Kaldorian ships spun, firing bright energy bolts into the dark void. Lasers crossed, metal screamed. Sarah's voice cut through the noise, ice cold. "Steady, team! One shot at this!" Her words guided the squadron, knifing toward the flagship with killing intent. The drones raced ahead, silent in the roar, darting around defenders, moving unseen by larger prey. The flagship loomed, a fortress bristling with guns. A flash sudden and blinding as the drones struck home. The flagship's shields shattered, hull ripped open by precise blasts. Victor's machines found their mark. The broken ship spiraled into fragments. In the command hub, a cheer erupted. Relief and triumph surged through the room. Screens flickered with fiery aftermath, glow reflecting off hopeful faces. Without their flagship, chaos took the Traxidas. Orders went unanswered. Ships hesitated, some colliding in panic while others drifted, purpose lost. Hale's voice returned, steady and clear. "Hit them hard, all ships, attack, turn the tide." Sarah pulled up her interceptor, surveying the wreckage. Her squadron reformed, ready to strike the heart of chaos. The Kaldorians joined in, ships quick and merciless. The tide shifted. An even match became a rout. Human and Kaldorian ships pushed forward, united and relentless. Victor breathed out, realizing he'd been holding it. Screens showed the tide changing for Earth and her allies. He whispered, a prayer for the victory at hand. Humanity. Fuck yeah. The ship engines hummed, and the screens glowed in the command center. Humans and Kaldorians stared at the screens, watching the red enemy ships. The last Traxidan ships still had some fight left. Hale's voice cut through the quiet focus. Target those ships, they're weak but not dead. His order echoed over the radio. Victor's eyes jumped between screens. He saw the enemy ships change course. They're speeding up. Right at us. No tricks. Full attack. Though his voice stayed flat, his chest tightened at the news. Sarah paused at her fighter's hatch, dressed for battle. She expected a fight, not a suicide run, but she knew what was at stake. Let's move, everyone. Protect the fleet now. Her rally carried through the tight hangar. Hale gripped the bridge railing, understanding the danger immediately. They want to take us with them. Intercept them. Don't let them hit the targets. Victor's fingers flew, adjusting the planet's guns. Power to the port guns. That's where they'll come first. His commands precisely aimed the firepower into a lethal web. Outside, space lit up as shells intercepted the enemy. Each blast marked a ship's end, now just a bomb. The void above Mars became a battlefield where victory meant survival. Mars's silent guns thundered shells and beams at the enemy ships. The ground shook with each shot, felt in boots and hearts. Below, soldiers looked up at the flashes, knowing the lights were all that stopped destruction. On the command ship, the crew worked fast, sweat on their faces as they tracked the enemies. "Target spotted," one called. "Ready to fire." The order came quick. The gunners focused. Destroy to protect. One by one, the suicide ships exploded under Mars's barrage. Bright flashes meant a hit, a defense, a piece of the future saved from fire. Victor breathed out, watching his defenses knock the ships off course. "Keep it up," he murmured, barely heard over the beeps and hum. Hale stood firm, a statue amid the raging battle. "Good work, everyone. Stay steady," he said. Muscles tense against the threat each enemy ship posed. The defense kept up its relentless pace. For every charging Traxidan ship, a cannon or beam from Mars was there to meet it. Metal and fire clashed with shields and power in a lethal dance to ensure life went on. Sarah flew her fighter in smooth arcs, dodging debris, watching for ships that slipped past. Her voice filled her wingman's ears, steady and calm amid the chaos. "Stay alert. It's not over yet." And it wasn't. More Traxidan ships came in waves, ready to take their enemy with them. But Earth and Kaldor stood strong. Human innovation powered the defenses Victor commanded, and they held firm. As the last enemy exploded silently, no cheers came. Only held breaths let out in shared relief that they had survived the storm. "We'll mourn later," Hale said, softening his hardened voice. "For now, we've got a war to finish." Victor nodded, eyes already back on the screens, ready to calculate, defend, and fight until the end. The control room on Mars was quiet. Colonel Hale stood stiff, staring at the main screen. It showed the aftermath, piles of wreckage where enemy ships had been. His hand rubbed his chin as he thought about the cost. Bodies floated among the scattered metal, each one someone's child. Victor leaned on his console, the lines on his face showing how tired he was. He flicked switches, reading the screens. His pulse slowed as it sank in they had survived. He took a breath, letting himself feel the pain of the dead. On Earth, the silence of space faded behind the roar of celebration. People flooded from their homes, packing the streets. Old flags, long packed away, waved over the crowd. They remembered the missing, those who gave it all for this moment. Sarah Knox moved through the party on Earth, her flight suit stained from the fight. Kids stared with wide eyes as she told of alien friends and human grit. Her voice stayed steady, telling a story of shared strength. In living rooms and bars, the screens replayed the battle, the skillful moves, the bursts of fire. They watched, cheered, and some cried as names of the dead scrolled by. In the shadow of Olympus Mons, engineers gathered the twisted enemy metal. These scraps would become monuments to the dead and victory. The harsh cost turned celebration into reflection. Back at control, Hale nodded to Victor. "Let's log the losses. Every name, every story. We owe them that." Victor nodded, throat tight. Each detail, each sacrifice, for the record, for us all. On Earth, vigils replaced parties. People stood, faces lit by flickering candles, each flame honoring a life given against the dark. Through the grief, the silence, humanity's spirit endured, woven from loss and love, courage and kinship. Earth stood with Mars, united, unbroken, a loud heartbeat for the galaxy. The command room held soldiers in grey uniforms around a round table. Screens on the wall showed streams of data the analysts studied closely. One analyst stood up, cleared his throat, and turned to the group with tense eyes. "We intercepted something bad. More Traxidans coming. A bigger fleet." Concern rippled through the room, eyes fixed on the flickering maps showing the threat. Colonel Hale stood straight, face hardened with resolve. His hand slapped the table, fingers spread. "We've won battles, not the war. Beef up defenses, bring forces together. We've got to get ready." The group nodded, understanding the seriousness. Celebrating victory was short. Now they focused on surviving. Orders went out. Men and women moved with purpose, leaving to do their jobs. In a lab filled with machine hums and tool clanks, Victor peered into a large turret, face smeared with grease. Sparks flew from a welder's torch nearby, the smell of hot metal in the air. Victor adjusted a part inside, fingers quick and sure. His team worked around him, faces determined under goggles and masks. "Check the energy relays," Victor said firmly over the noise. "Calibrate the pulse shields to the new specs. We need peak performance." The technicians moved faster, showing the urgency. Equipment beeped and whirred, lights blinking in sequence. Each technology was a lifeline, a chance against the coming darkness. Outside, Mars's sky was clear, but the ground mood was not. Soldiers moved through bases, reinforcing walls and checking weapons. Rovers drove over rocky ground, hauling supplies to critical points. On a ridge overlooking the base, Sarah stood in her combat suit, eyes fixed on the horizon. Her comms crackled to life. "Knox, status," came Hale's voice through the static. "Ready to move. Interceptors primed," she replied steadily. "We need every edge, the calm before the storm," Hale said. "I understand they won't break through." Sarah turned, boots kicking up red dust, and walked back to base. Soldiers saluted as she passed, respect in their eyes for the woman who'd led them through fire and would again. As the sun set over Mars, shadows stretched across the dusty plains. The alliance between humans and Kaldorians stood firm. Soldiers and scientists worked together, playing their parts in the war's symphony. The stage was set as stars emerged overhead. They prepared to face the darkness the universe held for them. "Humanity, fuck yeah," a soldier whispered, tightening his grip on his weapon as he looked at the night sky, both comforting blanket and abyss of unknown threats. The council room on Earth was tense. Military leaders, scientists, and government people were packed in tight, all staring at the hologram map flickering above the table. Too many bodies in the small space. Colonel Hale stood with Victor and Sarah as he talked loud to the crowd, his voice serious. "We got attention from space for our fight. New allies landing now. Our success brought them running for a peace." The doors opened and let alien diplomats enter. Species stayed away before, but now crossed over. 4 Tyvacs stood with shiny exoskeletons reflecting light. Behind them, 2 crystal aliens from Century glowed. The envoys approached the table one by one. They looked tired but eager. They carried cases and tablets with aid offers and allegiance terms. Sarah watched it happen with wary eyes and a hard face. She spoke low to Victor. "We the center of space politics now?" Her eyes followed the Tyvacs bowing as they gave Victor power cells. Victor was wired on stimulants and no sleep. He looked back at Sarah. "Looks that way. We'll be careful with this," he said. His eyes went to a glowing Centurion limb extended to him. Hale grunted agreement, but looked to the new tech already. "War effort only. We need guns and shields, not talk." Across the crowded room, cat aliens talked to Kaldorians with gadgets. Their whiskers twitched over translators. In one corner, Victor tapped a strange device given to them. He turned to an aide. "Figure this out fast. Can we use it?" On the other side, Hale pointed at the solar system map displayed. He talked with a huge envoy towering over him. "Our enemy has the numbers. You have ships for our flanks." The giant envoy nodded slow. "Our fleet can join you soon. We want balance, not control." The hum grew louder as dozens of worlds talked over battle plans. Far-off stars seemed closer as the room filled with talk of new guns, shields, and soldiers. Hale's voice carried loud over the noise. Fresh hope inside it. "Get these to where we need them. We've got a planet to defend. The galaxy's with us." The once small Earth Kaldorian team was now a bright beacon. It gathered many defenders in a diverse group. This makeshift command center had become the heart driving the Alliance against their shared enemy. In the control room, Victor set down a handful of small black gadgets. These were his new triumph. They could talk across light years in a blink. Colonel Hale looked them over, his frown softened. "Explain," he said evenly. Victor pointed at one. A map appeared overhead, the solar system. Icons marked their growing forces. "Instant, secure talk," Victor said plainly. "No delays. No risk of spying." A rare smile touched Hale's mouth. "Plug this into the troops. It'll change things." The next days were busy as they wove the network into their plans. Orders now swept the ranks fast. Each unit snapped to, like an orchestra tuning. Soldiers from many worlds marched together, weapons ready. Humans and Kaldorians swapped tools and tricks, improving each other's work. Sarah stood on a wide training field, a beacon to those around. Her commands cut through the noise of joint drills, guiding the choreography of gear and troops. "Forward! Covering fire on my mark," she called sharply, motioning as allied tanks and skimmers advanced together. The nimble Kaldorians wove between the sturdier human machines, a display of shared will. Some Kaldorian troops hesitated, unfamiliar with the land. Sarah went to them, feet firm in the rusty dirt. "Watch me," she said, taking cover behind a rock, waving them to mirror her moves. They followed her lead, finding the rhythm of the alien turf. In makeshift war rooms, hollow maps of the drills flickered with each completed move. Hale and his aides watched, worry easing into hope. The network pulsed at their core, each beat an order, report, all flowing through the Alliance. As night fell on Mars, the forces gathered under field lights. Their shadows stretched long on the ruddy ground. They shared food and stories, the divides crumbling under laughter and new respect. In those moments, as different fighters melded into one army, their spirit burned, an unvoiced anthem in every heart. Humanity, fuck yeah. The command center hummed with the constant flow of data. Victor sat hunched over the console, surrounded by his team. Code scrolled down the screen, reflecting in his eyes. His fingers flew over the keys, working through algorithms to crack the encrypted message. Hale stood nearby, brows creased. "Status?" His gravelly voice was worn but alert. "Traxidan, heavy encryption," Victor said, eyes still on the screen. His team hovered silently behind him. A young tech with a too-sharp stare spoke up. "It's different from normal Traxidan code, layered to hide." Hale stepped closer to Victor. "How's it different?" The tech pinched and dragged the code apart on the holoscreen. "To hide from their own as well." Victor nodded slowly. "A splinter faction, maybe. Not happy with the Torch Earth plan." Murmurs of hope rippled through the group. Victor's finger hovered over the enter key. He glanced at Hale. We're in. We'll know more now. Hale nodded, jaw tight. Do it. The room held its breath as Victor pressed down. The hidden message appeared, a plea from within the Traxidan ranks. A faction seeking peace, offering a ceasefire and meeting. Victor read the message aloud, voice steady. They want to talk, Hale. They're asking to meet, calling for a ceasefire. Hale reacted with hard skepticism. Could be a trap. Victor nodded. Can't ignore it. Could end this without more deaths. Verify it first. Track the source, Hale ordered. No action unless we're sure. The team traced the signal, weaving through firewalls and satellites. Minutes crawled as they worked silently. Victor cross-referenced patterns, tapping keys with purpose. Deep in what we thought was secure Traxidan space, a military outpost, maybe high command. Their splinter base, the tech added hopefully but wary. Keep digging, need proof, Hale said, gaze sweeping the room. The united team passed the message for truth or lies. Humanity's spirit fueled their resilience, ready for whatever came next. The plea sat on the screen, hope and danger entwined. The Alliance watched, waited, and worked as diplomacy dangled before them. The lab buzzed with activity. Screens flashed as data traced the signal source. Victor stood at a console, scanning results, tapping the metal edge. The ground shook, shaking the building. What was that? A tech asked, voice trembling. It's worldwide, another said, reading disaster reports on his screen. Earthquakes, floods, storms. Victor's heart sank. Alien terraforming tech turned against Earth. Get me images of the damage now, Victor said. He moved to another workstation covered in parts and tools. The main screen displayed flooded coasts, storm-bent forests, quaking cities. Victor gritted his teeth. Not nature, but war's cost. He turned to his team, some theorizing solutions. Ideas to stop this alien tech now. A younger team member stood, hair messy, clothes sweaty. We could modify the ion disruptors, stabilize the atmosphere and Earth. Victor nodded sharp. Do it. Prototype. Test. Yesterday. The room buzzed into motion, driven by purpose. Simulations ran as tools clattered, building the future now. Meanwhile, sirens wailed outside. People flooded from buildings, staring at the cracked, flooded streets. Soldiers and armored aliens rushed in, lifting rubble, guiding the stunned to safety. Help here, a soldier yelled with two aliens, freeing a trapped person. We have you. Stay strong. An alien's voice boomed, gently removing debris. Relief stations appeared. Humans and aliens handing out supplies, standing together. In the lab, Victor hunched over the console, code flying, creating digital salvation. The device took shape, coils and emitters to undo the damage. First test ready, Victor said, voice hoarse from concentration. The team gathered, device humming to life. Silence fell as the device worked. Cheers erupted at the first report, dissipating storm, stabilized tectonic plate. Distribute these. Every field team needs one, Victor said, satisfied and spent. That night, recovery efforts lit the skies. The Alliance stood united across worlds, united in purpose. From disaster bloomed solidarity, a silent vow. Humanity and their new friends would never yield. Victor stepped away, peering out at the night sky's mingled stars and faint ship lights, eyes reflecting Earth's resilient blue, as "Humanity fuck yeah" whispered through the darkness, undimmed. The airlock hissed as Colonel Hale stepped onto the moon's dusty surface. His suit shielded him against the void. Ahead stood the Allies, humans, Kaldorians and others, suited up in the atmosphereless environment. They walked in silence to the bunker, half buried in the grey dust. Inside, stark metal walls and dim lighting greeted them. A circle of chairs held the Traxidan dissenters, their armored bodies unnerving in the shadows. One rose on unfolding limbs. Colonel Hale, it clicked through the translator. We seek an end. Hale eyed the aliens. A heavy silence filled the room. Speak then, Hale broke the quiet. This united front you propose? The Traxidan representative clicked and shifted, unreadable. We fight for a future without endless war. Our kin are blinded by conquest. We will stop them with you. Murmurs stirred the human and Kaldorian leaders. Suspicion showed in their movements, but the hope for peace called to their weary hearts. Victor's voice buzzed securely in Hale's ear. "Be cautious, Hale. Opportunity or trap, we can't drop our guard." Hale nodded barely. "Your terms. The price of this peace." "No price." The Traxidan leaned close to its translator, mandibles near. "Only ending bloodshed. We share a common foe, those who perpetuate futile conflict." The discussion lasted hours. Promises were made, agreements drafted. Trust, fragile from struggle, was given reluctantly. Each word was weighed, each clause scanned for deceit. And always, Victor's voice warned of caution. Outside, shadows stretched across the barren landscape as the moon turned. Inside the bunker, the chance for peace grew. Documents were signed, ceasefires, integration plans, strategies for the coming days. The meeting ended with a nod from Hale, acknowledging their understanding, their shared goal. Hale's footsteps echoed as he left the bunker, gazing up at the endless stars, bright reminders of their purpose: home, future, survival. Boarding the shuttle, Victor's final message came through, hopeful but wary. "Prepare for the best, plan for the worst. Defenses stay up. Peace is welcome, but we'll be ready." Hale's reply was simple. "Understood. Let's get to work." The shuttle door closed with a clank as he began the journey back to the battle-scarred Earth he called home. Sarah paced back and forth, her boots thumping on the steel floor. Monitors and machines beeped all around her in the high-tech command room. She scanned the glowing screens, taking in streams of data. "Report," she ordered sharply. A tech looked up from a terminal. "Defense system is green. Victor's upgrades are working." Sarah kept staring at the screens. "Run diagnostics on the pulse guns. I want confirmation they're at full power." The tech's fingers flew over the controls, bringing up a 3D map of Earth dotted with defense points. "Starting now. 2 minutes." In the combat simulator, armored soldiers formed up. Holographic battlescapes materialized around them. Commands rang out as the troops reacted, moving with precision. "Alpha flank left, Bravo, fire on my mark!" a sergeant yelled over the artificial guns. Sarah watched critically from above as the soldiers honed instincts and teamwork. Humans and aliens moved fluidly, their training showing growing unity. She tapped her headset. "Control status on flight drills?" The reply was steady. "Aerial units at full combat sim. Losses acceptable." Above the battlefield, human and alien ships wove through holographic hazards. In the orchestrated chaos, they learned strengths, compensated for weaknesses, built warrior bonds. A pilot's thrilled voice came through. "Delta Wing, break on me! Let's trash these sims! Humanity, fuck yeah!" The control room tied everything together. Sarah orchestrated planet-wide defense from its heart. Her vigilance was the real shield. As dusk fell, Sarah stood silhouetted among the monitors. She saw their robust, unyielding defense take shape. She felt the pulse of readiness in Earth's guardians. When night swallowed the world, it wasn't uncertainty but a blank canvas to paint their defiance. The battle cry, "Humanity, fuck yeah," echoed not as words, but a promise of resistance for the coming fight. Colonel Hale stood rigid in the command room. The walls had lots of monitors that showed the cold space around them. Victor stood next to Hale. They both watched the big screen where red blips marked ships coming at them. Hale knew the ships meant violence was coming. "Get in battle formations, defensive lines," Hale said clearly to the room. His voice cut through the whispering about strategy and fear. He watched the blips move closer. War could start again at any moment. Victor worked the controls. He made the image bigger. There, he pointed at a new signal from the ships. "They're sending something." The Alliance officers and strategists looked at each other, just before they thought they'd have to fight. Now something had changed. The room felt calmer as they faced the unknown signal. "Get it and decode it," Hale told them. A tech worked fast at a console. Her hands were steady even with all the pressure. The room went quiet except for her typing and the hum of machines. "It's a message to their envoys," she said after a long moment. "They're standing down." People murmured at the news. Hale lifted his hand to get silence. He thought about what it meant. The vicious Traxidans had stopped their attack. It was almost impossible to believe. Victor studied the data on his screen. They're serious. The envoys confirm it. Hale walked over to the Traxidan envoys in less fancy armor. "You made this happen?" Hale asked them. He searched their faces for lies. The lead envoy nodded, solemn like a human. "Yes, Colonel. Our messages worked. We want the fighting to end." Hale thought about their losses in the war. He thought about the cost of more battles. Each moment without killing was a moment they gained. The Kaldorian in shiny armor tilted his head. "A truce could save many lives. We should see where this goes." The others nodded. Even battle-hardened soldiers wanted a break from violence. Hale saw the mix of relief and doubt in their eyes. "We accept the truce," Hale told them. His voice carried his command and a new hope. "But stay ready. This is just a quick ceasefire."
Victor sent orders to stop any attacks. Around the system, fleets powered down. Soldiers breathed sighs of relief. Kaldorians communicated silently with each other.
In orbit, the battle-ready ships went quiet, now watching over the uncertain peace. On Earth, people looked up at the stars. They didn't know about the tense situation and delicate new balance. In the control room, Hale and Victor exchanged a glance. They couldn't trust fully yet, but every moment without fighting let them gather strength. Even fierce soldiers knew peace had value. They would use the time to heal, prepare. For now, hope and resolve filled the message of humanity, fuck yeah. But it also carried caution. The war was paused, but not done. In the war room, harsh lights shone down on the Alliance leaders around the metal table. Screens and maps covered it, blinking dots for the enemy fleet beyond the asteroids. Victor leaned in, staring at the dots. "They're waiting," he said clearly, zooming the image. "But not for long." The room held a mix of uniforms and plain clothes, all focused on the threat ahead. Their faces showed the weight of past choices and future ones that could doom them. "We strike them now," a general said, eyes hard. "They won't expect an attack during the truce." Victor shook his head, fingers dancing over his console, pulling up a hologram of Earth wrapped in shimmering lines, his quantum network. "Or we use this time and strengthen defenses, make them reconsider attacking." Sarah stepped up, uniform crisp, face blank. She scanned the leaders before staring at the hologram. "Show them we're not weak, and they won't strike. Readiness is key." Her words cut the tension, shifting attention to the wargame screens. The Alliance's precision and raw power, ready and waiting. Around Mars, Earth and Kaldorian ships drifted, engines off but poised to roar to life. Sarah ran mock drills, laser arrays flashing, shields pulsing in sync. Victor turned to the leaders, resolute. "Let's make sure they're not just for show." Code rippled from his console, linking defenses system-wide. Turrets adjusted by degrees. Captains acknowledged fresh orders, crisp and instant. On Earth, civilians looked up hopefully, trusting the forces above to protect them, fears calmed by the whispered might that said, "We are ready." On the training grounds, Sarah watched soldiers, human and alien, execute a flawless defense, crisp and coordinated, a dance perfected by repetition and trust. Her orders carried across the field, instantly obeyed. "Keep them guessing," she said into her comm, linked to Victor and the leaders. "We're not just survivors. We're a force to be reckoned with. They wanted to extinguish us, but here we stand, ready to fight, ready to win." The leaders exchanged looks and nods. The decision was clear. Defenses took priority, their power a message. Humanity would not break, would not fall. The humanity fuck yeah spirit lived on, etched into every action, every choice, every calm moment before the storm. The colonel scowled at the map. It flashed red dots along the edges of the system, skirmishes that weren't ordered on either side. His aide studied data, reading through logs for details. "This shouldn't be happening," the colonel said. His eyes watched every flare of lasers in space. "I know," the aide answered. He tapped into the comm archives, digging for facts. No orders went out for these fights. The colonel saw a playback of battle, a drone caught in the chaos, laser bursts breaking the silence that should be there. The reports had no big losses, but the tension felt as hard as the metal under his hand. He turned to his aide, who nodded. It's a setup, trying to break the truce before it starts. Hours turned into days as they gathered everything. Messages and data poured in. The aide finally had the smoking gun, a Traxidan fringe faction behind the clashes. They wanted war still. Got them, the aide said, voice grim but proud. They called the fringe to a meeting. A bare room on a station was neutral ground. The humans laid out their proof. The air was cold with distrust. We have evidence, the colonel stated flatly. The data was all there to see. Your own people undermine peace. The Traxidan in armor looked it over, its body unreadable but its silence loud. You demand justice. It finally clicked and hummed. The fringe had their own closed meeting. Hours later they came out with a decision. The saboteurs would be handed over, shackled for causing more war. The exchange happened outside on the hull. The stars watched it all. Humanity took custody of the Traxidan troublemakers. It made the weak truce stronger. Peace is fragile, the colonel said. He watched them go with no love lost. His aide was there too. But worth the effort, he added. They knew the path ahead could hold more danger, but for now the truce held on. A ceasefire kept by hard eyes on peace, even amid the chaos of war. The command center buzzed with purpose. Victor and Sarah stood at the holotable, scanning projections of the solar system. Strategists and engineers from Alliance worlds surrounded them, intent on the mission. We have stealth drones ready, Sarah said, pointing to blue dots that blinked into view, equipped for silent strikes. Victor tapped coordinates into his tablet, face taut with focus, undetectable until it's too late. A Kaldorian tactician stepped forward, exoskeleton gleaming. Infantry will move in fast once defenses are breached. The team studied a holographic battle map. Victor indicated 2 key points. Hold these lines, don't let them reach the core. An aide approached with a data slate. All troops briefed. They know this is do or die. Sarah met his gaze. Evacuation protocols ready? On your command, the aide replied, steel in his voice. A hush fell. Screens flashed updates, engines rumbled in the distance. If talks fail, we hit hard with everything. Victor's voice was steady. This is our home. We do not yield. Sarah stepped up, stance firm. We planned for this, trained for this. Humanity, fuck yeah, means fighting together no matter what comes. The Alliance members nodded, united in purpose. The holotable turned slowly, watching over them. Victor and Sarah exchanged a wordless look. The operation was more than just a plan. It was a stand, a declaration of might and determination. As they returned to stations, the tension was electric. No room for mistakes. The future hung in the balance, but their resolve was unshakable. They stood together, soldiers, defenders of a future they would seize. The buzz of activity filled the room. Beyond the walls, humanity waited, trusting. Operation Final Dawn poised to unfold in the void of space. The control room on Mars exploded with action. Screens flashed updates. The crew leaned forward, tense. Victor's fingers flew over his console. Messages about the Traxidan fleet streamed across the system faster than light. The silver ships drew closer in the black void of space. Their goal, attack. Start Operation Final Dawn! Colonel Hale barked the order. His voice stayed steady. He didn't need to yell. The words hit like hammer strikes. The room burst into motion. Mars's defense systems came alive. Energy pulsed through the linked guns and shields, each cannon aligned to Victor's coordination. Blue and white fire spat from the barrels. The planet's surface lit up where the human weapons met the first Traxidan ships. Earth's rage took form. Each shot sang a defiant chorus. In space, the joint fleet expanded outward. The Kaldorian ships slid forward, smooth and deadly. The human vessels followed, bulky and resolute. They moved together, one force made of many flags. A dance in the empty void, they spun around each other, dodging, firing back with accuracy from Victor's network. Human and Kaldorian alike faced the dark, guns blazing. Sarah watched her soldiers, the ones she'd trained and led, molded into a shield against the night. She gave orders, voice calm amid the storm, clear commands. No hesitation, The troops reacted as one being with many hearts, but a single mind. They anticipated their roles before acting, focus honed to a razor's edge. "Hold the line," she called, backdropped by Mars's red dust swirling around the command post. "Push them back." The soldiers obeyed. They met the Traxidan attack with lead and fire, a living, breathing wall that fought with Earth's stubborn defiance burning through their veins. The heart of humanity's rallying cry made real. Their grit overcame an empire that had wiped stars from the sky. Above, the Alliance ships twisted through the black-silver streaks, dodging volleys seeking to extinguish them. Captains barked orders already flowing through the network, responses anticipating requests. On the front lines, the edges in the sky, they stood, fought, lived the message, "We will not fade, we will not fall." Earth and Mars' tale wasn't finished, it had just begun. As the battle raged, as humanity's future took shape in lasers and light, each heart knew. Their spirit, their defiance, would echo forever in the stars.